Some people should be thankful that breathing is an autonomic function, because if those people had to make a conscious effort to breathe, they just wouldn't survive. This story is about one of those people, and it's a Florida man story. Naturally. On the 13th of August 2008, a man broke into the Junkanoo Bar in Fort Myers Beach, Florida after it had closed for the night. He wasn't after money. He just wanted a drink to celebrate his birthday, and he was in the right place. It just wasn't the right time of day. In the process of breaking in, the burglar tripped the alarm, which, by all accounts, was not a silent alarm. During the burglary, in which the thief only managed to snag a bottle of liqueur, the alarm company, ADT, called the bar, and this smooth brain actually answered the phone. Did he stop proving his stupidity there? No. No, he did not. Because he gave the alarm company his real name. And I am not making this up. The perpetrator also failed to cover his face, so the surveillance cameras got some very clear shots of him. It's here that reports start to diverge. One report simply states that the police tracked him down with the evidence the thief unwittingly provided. At least one other report, however, says that the thief returned to the bar the next day, this time during business hours, when an employee who had seen the surveillance video recognized him and proceeded to call the police. Meet Christopher Cron, the latest contestant for The Chosen Few. He was 47 at the time of the break-in, with an arrest record, at least in Florida, that dates back to 2005 and has continued throughout the years, including an unbelievable 6 arrests in 2023, which is the latest date on record, again, at least in Florida. I really need to stop asking how dumb people can get. This is getting out of hand. Let me ask you a question. If you committed some crimes, got convicted of said crimes, but took off before your sentencing and were on the run from the police, would you then put yourself on a dating app? I'm going to assume most of you said no. I mean, I certainly wouldn't. Hell, most normal people wouldn't. This guy, however, this guy isn't exactly a normal person. Meet Wayne Parker. Mr. Parker was convicted in October of 2022 of defrauding suppliers and creditors of £765,000. That's around $970,000 for my American friends, so quite a hefty sum. He was scheduled to be sentenced in February of 2023 in Ipswich Crown Court, but skipped town before that could happen. The inevitable arrest warrant was then issued. Except no one could find him. Nobody knew where he was, or if they did know, they weren't talking. Parker was in the wind for over 7 months. He went completely undetected. Well, he was undetected until he put a profile on Match.com, and as much as I wish that was a joke, it isn't. How the police tumbled onto his profile wasn't mentioned in any of the stories I read, but the amazing thing is that it wasn't what got him caught. He was caught on the very last day of August 2023 during a routine traffic stop, of all things. When he was finally sentenced in September of 2023, he got 5 years for fraud, absconding, fleeing sentencing, as well as some animal welfare offenses. Seriously, if you were on the run from the law post-conviction and pre-sentencing, shouldn't you be keeping the lowest possible profile? Parker did pretty well right up until he went all smooth brain and tried to get a date online. Now, it's certainly reasonable to assume that dating websites would be fairly low on the law enforcement watch list, but why take the chance? Of course, if he hadn't taken that chance, he wouldn't have secured his place among the chosen few. Everyone on the planet should know by now that producing counterfeit US currency is one of the hardest things you can possibly try to do. The paper, the inks, even the colors of those inks are very unique and almost impossible to faithfully duplicate. Let's not mention the nearly invisible security strip embedded in most bills. It might have been easier back in 2013 to counterfeit, but I doubt it was appreciably so. None of that, however, stopped the next smooth brain from trying. Meet Jared Carr. His claim to fame, as it were, stems from an incident in 2013 at the Walmart in Village of Lake Hallie, Wisconsin, after trying to return a printer that he claimed was defective. Unfortunately for him, he failed to put the paper tray back in the box, nor did he remember the installation disc. When the service desk employees noticed that those items were absent, they gave the printer an even closer look. That's when they found a sheet of paper in the printer. A sheet of paper that had 2 $100 bills printed on it, with a third spot that looked suspiciously like another bill had been there, but had been carefully cut out. The Walmart employees did all they could to accommodate Mr. Carr, but the man just wouldn't take no for an answer. A smarter man would have realized his mistake after one of the workers pointedly returned the sheet of paper to him, cut his losses, and noped out of there. But Mr. Carr wasn't that smart. He insisted on getting a refund, even if it was just half the purchase price. Still he was refused, and still he refused to accept that answer. Until the police got there, that is. That's when he decided it might just be time to beat feet, except it was too late. After the police learned what was going on, Jared Carr was arrested and charged with attempted theft by fraud, forgery, and resisting arrest. It was also determined that a neighboring jurisdiction had felony arrest warrants out for him for armed robbery and burglary. I can't find what, if any, sentences he received, but I kinda hope they were substantial. Let me get this straight. You want to return a printer without a receipt, no less, even though you neglected to include all of the parts, left a sheet of paper in said printer that clearly incriminates you in a counterfeiting operation, refused to leave the store after your return was denied, and raised enough of a fuss that the police are called to remove you. And you did all of that knowing you had 2 felony warrants. Mr. Carr gives new meaning to the phrase, "if stupid was a person," but he is now one of the chosen few. In June of 2023, police were called to the Juicy Crab in Austell, Georgia, after a group of people ate around $100 worth of food, then failed to pay the bill. As the group drove away, a restaurant employee got a picture of their license plate. It was the perfect evidence for the police when they arrived in response to the restaurant's call about the incident. Unfortunately for the owner of the car, not only did the police now have his license plate number, they also had his cell phone, which he had inadvertently left behind in the booth the group had occupied. And on that phone, the picture on the lock screen appeared to be a selfie of the driver. With those 2 pieces of evidence, police very quickly determined the identity of the driver, one Brian Garfield Fort. It was also determined that Mr. Fort was wanted in DeKalb County for murder. It was just a few short hours before he was arrested in Brookhaven thanks to a hit on his license plate. He was charged with murder, receiving stolen property, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, although the latter 2 charges have since been dropped. At the time of this recording, he appears to still be in custody awaiting trial on the murder charge. Oh, and the reason he's a convicted felon is because he was arrested in 2022 for showing up to a high school football game carrying a shotgun and 2 handguns, so he seems to have a history of making smooth-brain decisions. If you're going to run up a large bill at a restaurant, it might be a good idea to not leave your cell phone behind when you skip out on that bill. It's even worse when you're already wanted for a violent crime and the lock screen on your phone is a selfie. And that would be how Brian Garfield Fort wound up in the chosen few. I have yet another rentahitman.com story, and this one is far, far worse than hiring a hitman to end your ex-husband like Wendy Ween, or trying to become a hitman like Josiah Garcia. All parties are innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. With that legal disclaimer out of the way, on with the video. And y'all ain't gonna believe this one. Meet Jasmine Paez. 18-year-old Jasmine met 18-year-old Gamaliel Sosa. The two liked each other right away, but Sosa said they couldn't be together. The problem keeping them apart was a child. More specifically, Jasmine's 3-year-old son. According to text messages between the two, Sosa would not be with her if she didn't get rid of the kid. Jasmine, heartbroken but determined, initially lied to Sosa and told him she'd taken the boy into the woods to either be eaten by bears or drown. Sosa, however, wanted pictures proving the child was truly gone. Jasmine obviously didn't have pictures. After some thought, however, she came up with a plan. She was going to be with Sosa no matter what. She remembered her website she'd heard about, rentahitman.com. She filled out a form on the site and waited a day or 2 until someone from the site contacted her, inquiring if she still needed their services. She did. She gave the person an address that the target would definitely be at on a specific date and at a specific time. Who was the target, you ask? Her 3-year-old son, and you have no idea how much I wish I was making that up. The administrator of rentahitman.com contacted the Miami-Dade authorities several times about Paez before anyone would take him seriously. But Paez was arrested in July of 2023 and charged with unlawful use of a communications device and first-degree solicitation to commit murder. She was also ordered to stay away from her son, who began living with relatives after her arrest. Sosa was arrested in August of 2023 and charged with first-degree conspiracy to commit murder and unlawful use of a communications device. He was also ordered to have no contact with the child or even anyone under the age of 18. It would appear, at least at the time of this recording, that Paez and Sosa both posted a $15,000 bond each and are awaiting trial. Most of you don't know this, but I have a blended family. I have 4 children, but only the youngest is mine by blood. Long story short, his egg donor, and I refuse to call her his mother, essentially abandoned him on my doorstep maybe a week after he turned 1 and disappeared for about a year and a half. I had custody of him from that day on, raised him as best I could, with a lot of help from my family, until I met my wife 23 years ago. Before I met her, I'd had a few opportunities to settle down with women with whom I could have been perfectly happy, except a few of them wanted me to give up my son. It had actually gotten to the point where I resigned myself to being alone. Then I met Mrs. Hunter, and the rest, as they say, is history. I will never understand a parent giving up their child, or children, for another person. That said, the deepest, darkest, and hottest levels of hell are reserved for those who take, or plan to take, the lives of their own children. And I hope Jasmine Paez gets everything she deserves.